Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on our third webinar for Blazedpath. I am joined by Gustavo, our managing director. Go ahead and say hello, Gustavo. You appear to be muted, Gustavo.
Sorry about that. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our third webinar. I'll be commenting along Jose's explanation about Blazedpath tools.
Thank you for that, Gustavo.
Go ahead.
So we are going to go over the table of contents. We went on our previous webinars, we went over the full life cycle of how to start installing your application, to grab a workspace with a solution from a stencil. And then from that stencil, we went over the local previews that you can do as many as you need for your development. And then on our second webinar, we went over the cloud services, where you actually create your deployable packages with the Kubernetes, the Dockers, or the actual source code, so you can create the deploys yourself. So today, we are going to go over a couple of basic features that will help you getting started on creating your own products. And we are going to go over how to use the basic programming language we have. We are also going to go over how to create a couple of screens, how to navigate on the screens, how to use the menus and the routings for the screens. And finally, we are going to go ahead and do some customization on the theming of the application, so you can see how we can use CSS files and how to set up the classes and how to assign the CSS classes to the widgets in the application.
Yeah, so today we'll be covering, we'll see blockies, which are our main way of structuring custom code without actually coding. This is one of the most important aspects on Blazedpath because it's the same language or pseudo language really. It's based on blocks of instructions that we'll see, that it's used all over the application, all over the platform, to customize behaviors and logic, both in the front end, in the back end, and in other parts of the platform. And this is what you see that gives full flexibility to, it's really providing very little to no constraints or limitations to development. And it is a little bit lower level than you'll find in other local platforms, but it gives the developer much more expressive power and versatility to customizing behavior and logic.
Oh, thank you, Gustavo. Just remember, we are going to be using this blocky across all the solution, all the microservice, all the front ends, all the customization of all the behaviors that you are going to use on your solution. Independent of the level of the context, we have the same language, so you only have to learn it once. And if you already know how to program, this is going to be very intuitive. So let's go ahead directly into the application so you can see how it goes. So let me open it again. This is our solution that we're going to be visiting today to showcase the examples of this webinar. Basically, the blocky is our pseudo language, as Gustavo was explaining more in detail. This is the pseudo language we use across all of the Blazedpath suite to customize behavior. As you can see, we have a big canvas on the middle where we actually start writing the code with the blockies. We are going to show you a couple of examples of how to use it, but as you can see, you have the metadata of this is a function of a microservice. So as you can see, this blue icon here is a system, and this is a function that resides inside the system. So the name of the function is initialize quizzes database. This is, by the way, this solution we are visiting today is the same solution we did for the tutorials on our channel. we have a detailed explanation of 22 steps of how to go from complete scratch until having the actual game with a quizzes game deployed and ready to use. So this particular function has metadata on the top. As you can see, it's strongly typed. So this n here is the return object, the object type. This is the name of the function, and in between parentheses we have the arguments. This particular function has no arguments. Then we have a section that defines the variables, and then we have the canvas below that actually configures where you can actually write the actual solution. As you can see, it's pretty much similar to what you would expect from any other programming language. But this particular pseudo language, we have blockies. We have on the left with all the normal operators you would ever use or need in any case. For example, let's say you want to write an if, continue this function with an if at the bottom. You would go to the list of blockies on the left. If you know the name but you don't want to scroll, you can just type on the search bar on the top, just write if, the name of the blocky, grab the blocky, drop it on the canvas, and as you can see, it already has the blocky already typed for you. So if you mouse over the blocky, you can add extensions to the blocky. A normal extension to an if blocky, it's an else if or an else that are chained to the initial blocky. So you would see this behavior on a couple of blockies that have chained behavior, like an open blocky or for example this one.
Yeah. So you see how the blocky with programming this way, it kind of guides you what blocks are compatible or should go with other ones. And it's really providing boundaries about structure and about syntax, and it's simplifying much of the syntax and structure involved in coding or in programming. And we'll explore more about this along this webinar today.
Thank you, Gustavo. So let's carry on with this showcase. So if you go in here on the if blocky, you see 3 dots. So the actual expression that it's being evaluated in here, we use an editor for our expression. It's an expression editor, and if you click on the 3 dots, it will pop up the expression editor where you can actually start typing whatever you need. And let's say I want to call another function, and if I start typing, let's say an m or a sum, I'm going to have all the functions that start with those. It's like a search function with IntelliSense that shows you everything available on your system. So let's say you import an extension from the npm.js library, you will find it here. So in this example, because this is an if, I'm just going to type 1 = 1, and this will showcase the if, and if not, else if, you can write anything else in here. So let's say you want to do something inside the blocky, you would grab another blocky, in this case, let's say an execute. So I'm going to write execute in there and grab the execute blocky and drop it onto inside the if blocky. So this secondary chain blocky is going to execute inside the if of the first one. So as you can see, this is, once you get used to it, it's much faster than actually typing, and you forget about having to worry on indentation and all those kind of decisions that makes code across many collaborators to be different and hard to read. So I'm going to do a quick example of how to create a function inside the system for the front end. And this function is going to be doing a query on the database, a direct query on the database, and it's going to pop up as an alert on the page. So that you can see how to actually use a function from an event that actually displays useful information on the front end of the application. So I'm going to go to the element, to the system here, and I'm going to right click, create a new folder with my examples. So I can have everything on the same spot. And I'm going to create a new function. My function is going to, this function is the purpose of this function is to return the number of questions that are on a certain topic of this quizzes game. This is a quiz game. On the game you select a topic, and on the topic you will have among a lot of questions. It will give you a couple of questions to answer and get a score accordingly. So our objective here is to get a query on the database to see how many questions we have on a certain topic. So get quizzes by topic. So we have our base blocky. We have a routing section on the right. This is currently, and it's going to stay empty because this is going to be a function that will only be available inside the system itself, the front end itself. So I'm not going to be using this this function from another system. So the routing is going to remain empty. If you want to expose this function to the outside of the system as a REST call, you'd have to start completing the routing section as we saw on the tutorials on the channel. So I am going to be returning a string type. So click on the three dots to the left of the function name, click on string. You can also type it so it's faster. And I'm going to add a parameter on the parenthesis in the plus, with the plus, and I'm going to take an integer, and the name of my parameter is going to be my topic ID. So what I want to do in this function is to return a value, and this value is going to depend on the expression I write on the three dots in here. This is going to just execute an expression and return the value of the resulting expression to whoever called the function. So I'm going to click on the three dots and I'm going to start writing in here convert, because this is going to be a number. I'm going to first convert it to string. So convert to string, and as you can see, I started typing convert, and the expression editor already gives me all the functions with that naming. So convert to string, open parenthesis, and on the top of the expression editor, if you forgot how the metadata of this function goes, it gives you a direct link to the documentation we have on the web page and the metadata of the function itself, so you can actually give it so you don't have to actually remember what all of the functions do on the fly. So now I am going to make a count, because I'm going to be getting a list of all the quizzes by topic. I'm going to make a count of a list, count, and I'm going to call the microservice for the list, and I'm going to give it as an argument an object with the topic ID. So quizzes microservice, type it again, quizzes microservice dot list quizzes, enter, open parenthesis, and in here I am going to open a curly bracer because I'm going to initialize an object on the fly. I'm going to write the attribute of the object, two dots, and I'm going to use my parameter ID. My topic ID is if you write the circumflex, it already tells the expression editor that this is a parameter that lives outside this context. So I'm just going to click on enter, close the curly braces, close the parenthesis, close again, and close again. So this expression is going to get a list by topic. Then I'm going to count the amount of lists, and I'm going to convert that that result to a string so that I can then use it as an alert on the front end. So now, because I would just want to see this alert as soon as my web page loads, I'm going to go to the onload event, And as you can see, I have a couple of different blockies in here. The blocky I want to use right now is the alert message blocky. This is going to pop up an alert, and I'm going to, on the title, I'm going to write how many quizzes are there in the topic number 1. And this number and the answer to this question is going to be on the actual body message, which is going to be directly the function get quizzes by topic, and I'm going to pass a 1. I'm just gonna click enter, select the severity for this alert message. This is just going to be information, and click on run. And this is going to compile the information, the solution on the local studio. And when it finished compiling and launching the memory preview, I'm going to open the front end, and we will see the actual alert message. So go to the console where the solutions are being launched, and I'm going to open the admin web frontend, which is the one I'm working on. Click on the local host, see that it opens on my computer, and you can see the alert message that says how many quizzes are there in the topic, and you can see the answer here. It gave us a 50, which is the amount we initialized the database with. So this is a very quick example of how to actually use functions. As you can see, writing a function that do meaningful stuff on your solution is very easy once you get used to it. You get direct access to everything with the blockies and the expressions. They are really easy to write, and they give you very easy access to the documentation. So we can go directly into our examples for the screens, because we actually now know how to use our functions. We are going to jump over how to create a screen, how to navigate to that screen, and as we can see, we can make very modular screens by injecting other screens inside certain screens, so we can reutilize our work later on. So I'm just going to stop my services on the Quizzes app. I am going to remove the alert message so it doesn't pop up each time I launch it. I'm just going to remove it here. And on my examples, I'm going to create a new screen by right-clicking, selecting new on the UI component, and this is going to be called component, called from main menu. This is just a name I'm going to use right now that it's easy to remember. So click on OK, and it's going to open up the designer of the application. The idea of this designer, let me first show you an example before we start building on this page, is that we have our designer with the canvas on the middle that represents a very similar, as you can see here, it's almost exactly the same as the end result. So you can actually start working directly on how it's going to end up looking at. And also we have the widgets on the left where you can find anything you need really, with buttons, labels, checkboxes, grids, just direct HTML renderers so you can do stuff yourself, icons. And this list is extensible, so you can import libraries from anywhere else and reutilize them inside Blazedpath. So once you click on a widget that's already in the canvas, you can see on the details that we have a lot of attributes exposed for each widget, where you can set up normal stuff on HTML like paddings, borders, maybe an icon, an extra title. You can customize the CSS class, as we are going to see later on, and each widget is going to have a name that is actually then used on the other side of these designers, that because this is just a designer preview, whenever you want to customize the behavior, you are going to go to the logic tab. This logic tab is using blocky to customize and express the behavior of each widget of the design tab if you want to do something specific. So let's say I'm going to add a button here that navigates to my new page. So I can just add a button from my list, drop it into the canvas. I'm going to select the button here and I'm going to add it a text, navigate to new page. This text is going to update instantaneously. And if I go to the logic tab and go to the events, I can right click on the events, find the button I have, and I can customize the behavior of the click. So clicking here. So whenever I click on that button, this is the event that it's going to be launched. So what I want to do right now is to open my new component inside a window just to see how it goes. So first I'm going to create the component, and then I'm going to use the behavior to call the component from the home screen. So I'm going to go back to my new screen, and I'm just going to be doing something very easy, which is use an HTML renderer just to render a text so that you can see we actually navigated to this screen. So click on the HTML renderer, go to HTML template that directly, you can write directly a HTML in here. So I'm just going to use a text with the h1 tag, hello webinar number 3. Click on OK. And since this specific HTML renderer has to be initialized whenever you start this particular page, I'm going to go to the logic tab. I'm going to go to the main initial event, and I'm going to just tell the widget to load. So I'm going to use a set value widget. I'm going to select what widget I want to add a value to, and I'm going to just pass an empty object with no information because this is just a plain text. So this is the page we are going to see whenever we click the button on a window, and the way to make that behavior is going to the home page, go to the event we just created, the button 3_click, and use an open blocky in which we are going to set up we can set up an icon, a title, and we can select UI component to select in here. So I'm going to add an icon, just a random icon so it's easier to do, add.svg. These icons are in a folder called icons. I'm just going to add a title. This is my opened window. Select my component called from the main menu. There is no starting mode that I want to actually pass, so I'm just going to pass on an empty object with the curly braces, open and close the curly braces. I'm going to use a window for this. As you can see, you can use the left drawer, the right drawer, the full screen. The size is going to be just the default size, and there is going to be an OK and cancel button, but we're just going to select no buttons in here. So that's all we had to do to create a screen and call it from the main menu. So I'm just going to launch the local preview, click on run. And while we wait, I can see that there's a question on the chat. Just give me a couple of minutes. When we go into the Q&A, we are going to read the questions we have, and you can ask any question you want. we will answer all the questions we can with Gustavo when we finish the exercises. So I'm going to open again the web frontend, wait until they all launch. There should be one more to go. There you go. The reason it takes so long is because this particular example initializes a local memory database each time I click run as mock data. So it usually on my computer it takes a second. So click on the portal. Wait until it loads. Click on my new button that wasn't here before. And as you can see, we have my window with the icon and the text. So if I want to, I can add a secondary page in here below this hello webinar. I have to create a container inside the hello webinar 3 screen. I can actually call an open container from an open container, so you can really reutilize your work as many times as you need. So it's really a modular way of working to then reutilize as many times as you have to.
Yeah, and also we'll see in the future, in some future webinars, that you can actually share assets or components, functions, screens, wrap it in an asset and share it and use it in another project. So you can reutilize, like you said, not only within your solution, but actually with other solutions when you share assets between them.
Thank you, Gustavo. So our last example today is because Blazedpath by default has a standard theme that you may want to change the theme of your own solutions. So we are going to do a couple of examples to illustrate this point. So the two things we are going to do is to change two examples that one is very simple and the other one is not so simple. The first is going to be to change the color of this button. This is going to be a very simple fix. Just use CSS to change the background color of this button. And then we are going to go into this table, topics admin. And we are going to grab this particular table, which by default is not striped. And we are going to apply a stripe with a certain color that we can very easily, once you have the CSS, it's very easy to apply it to any widget on your solution. So the first thing I have to do is to actually add the CSS file. So on my examples in here, I'm going to go right click, add file, and I'm going to call my new CSS file my styles.css file. This name doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the name classes inside the file. So I have the CSS prepared for these examples. We are going to use two classes. Let me open it much bigger so you can see it. We are going to be using two classes. The first one is just going to be a mic background class that changes the color of a background, and then I'm going to use the other class that has the information to change the color of each odd row of a table. So just going to copy this CSS information onto Blazedpath and just close the CSS file. But before that, I'm going to copy this name so I can then paste it on the designer. So I'm going to go to the CMP home component, search for my button here, and on the details, I'm going to search for the CSS class field. I'm just going to write or copy my CSS class name. And if I click on run, I'm going to see the color of the button changed on my local memory preview. Again, I'm going to switch over to the console and wait for the database to initialize again and see the change. Just give it a second. Open the web admin frontend. And as you can see, we have the same button that we had before for the other page. It was blue. Now it's with a teal kind of color. And it was very easy. Once you have the CSS file with your theming, you can just add it to the widget and make your page look like you want it to. So our next example is going to...
And of course, that CSS file you can use across the entire platform, so you're consistent with your style in not only within the same page, but also with the rest of the pages. And if you have a signature style that you can define externally, you can apply it consistently to all your application or applications. Right?
Thank you, Gustavo. So our next example is we are going to go to this table. As you can see, it's a very stylish table. It's a very nice looking table. When we did our tutorial, we spent a couple of minutes tweaking the attributes of this grid table. This grid details, so we can actually have like the rounded borders with the shadowing. But now we actually want to add the stripes, which by default we have no stripes. So we are just going to go back to we're going to stop the solution running, go back to the Explorer, open up the CSS file again, copy the name of the CSS class, find the grid we want to change, topics admin on this component, click on the grid, search for this CSS class name field, and just copy the name of the class. So I'm just going to run the solution again and show you how the actual table now looks with the stripes. Go to the console again. And open the front end of this solution. Go to the screen with the table, and you can see the stripes already added. So as you can see, once you have the CSS with your theming, it's very easy to apply it anywhere on your solution. Maybe the last thing we can do here is to show you how you can add images. We have an editor in here that you can actually render and change your images. So this is an SVG with all the information to actually see it, to display it with a local preview. So if you start messing with this section, you can see on the preview that it changes as you work in it. So it's not an editor to actually maybe create new SVGs, but you can actually make sure they render correctly on Blazedpath. So it's very easy to make sure you have your assets and then start applying the assets on your local preview. So I think that with that we are already on the 25-30 minute marks, Gustavo. We want to go over to Q&A, and I think there was at least one question.
Yeah. Let's go back to one of the questions we had on the chat, and it was about the possibility to call a function, define a function in Blazedpath, and have that function not only be used inside Blazedpath, but rather be used from outside Blazedpath from another application, a third-party application. Very, very interesting question.
Right.
And of course, the answer is yes. So the idea of Blazedpath is that all functions can potentially be turned into a REST service very easily with just a few routing parameters. So also, if you want to show where that
Yeah.
gets defined,
Well,
the idea is that we had defined the microservice, that blue box there called microservice. There's a function that's used internally that you can call within your project whenever another system with your project sees that microservice that contains a function. You can very quickly call it, doing microservice.function. You call it immediately. But also that function can be exposed as a REST service from outside your solution. So have a path for it, a URL path with a few parameters that get routed into the actual function parameters. So Jose, if you will.
Yeah.
And of course, there are security configurations to access that function.
Yeah. The security, which is optional, of course. You actually have to just open your normal function. This is going to be a microservice. This is a function on a microservice. The microservice has a routing section, and if you configure the routing section in here, it will then tell the microservice that when it starts to expose this function as an endpoint as a REST endpoint. So this, you have to configure the path, the HTTP method, and if you have parameters, you can set them up here and tell the parameter if they are on the path, on the query string, or in the body. So once you configure this section on the routing, you will see that if you open the microservice, in this case it's the blue icon, you will find the Swagger definition with all the exposed function that this microservice has, so you can then reutilize them outside of Blazedpath, or these same functions are being called across Blazedpath, across microservices. So that's a very interesting question. It's you don't have to bother with any extra plumbing code to make your systems connect. Blazedpath do everything for you, but if you want to use them outside, you can also use the Swagger definitions to import them somewhere else if you want to.
Yeah, so the point of Blazedpath is really, once you have the function with just a few clicks and parameters to add, you can very quickly generate and expose a REST service. So that's very useful. And the idea is that although it feels like you're coding when you are creating a function, it's really the only type of code you need to concentrate only on the functions and behavior of your business that you're solving, of your application. You see, when you do traditional coding, you spend a lot of time also doing what's called scaffolding. So all the code that structures the rest of the code and all the plumbing code that makes provider A connect with messenger or receiver B, and transforming information to be sent over to other objects. So all that plumbing code that it's only underlying from and supporting the business logic and behavior, you don't need to create that here with Blazedpath. It's all automatically done for you. And in that way, it's very quick, but it's also very powerful at the same time, because you have virtually an entire language or pseudo language at your disposal to create your logic and behavior.
Thank you, Gustavo. So we have another question from Alicia. It's just she asked if you can change or how to change the color of those stripes on the table. So for that example, I'm just going to go and find the different color, 0303. Just select a different color. For this example, I'm just going to use an orange color for this example. Pick the hexadecimal number, and this number I'm going to go over to my CSS file, which was on the quizzes admin frontend. Open the CSS file, and change the number, the hexadecimal number of the CSS class, and this will immediately reflect on the table. So as you can see, it's just a matter of changing the configuration of your CSS files and just see how they feel. Just give it a second until it launches, and you can see the new color. Click on the local host. Go to the actual. There you go. Some orangey stripes on the table.
Well, I think we've covered some front-end tools today and functions, both functions for the, well, mainly this time was for the backend, but these are the same functions that you can use, or the same style of perform, customizing behaviors in the front end. So it's the same pseudo language blocks that you can use everywhere within Blazedpath. You learn it once, you apply it everywhere. I think it's a good place to wrap up.
Yeah. So on our next webinar, we're going to go over some other useful and very commonly used features for Blazedpath. Just let us know in the comments or in the forums if you want us to cover any specific topic, maybe whatever you want to see covered, and we are going to make sure we can help you solve whatever issue you're having. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't, and thank you for joining us either on the lives or on the later views.
So thank you for joining, and until next time, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.